safe to come on down the stairs and head on out. Please make sure you have all your personal possessions with you, unless they're my size. And in just a few moments, this has been a burying ground since 1659. And if you look just above the rooftops, there in the near background, you can see the white church steeple of the Old North Church, the oldest in the city, from 1723, just over 300 years old. Made even more famous with Longfellow's poem. Remember the poem, The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere? The lines, "Runneth by land, toeth by sea." The code. When the British ordered their troops to muster on the banks of the Charles River on the night of April 18, 1775, beginning their quest to capture our powder and munitions in Lexington and Concord. As the British troops marched past the church, the sextons hung 2 lanterns in that steeple, indicating they were taking the water route to Lexington and Concord, crossing the river, rather than the land route, which was to the west and a bit longer. Many people saw those 2 lanterns, including Paul Revere, who lived right nearby. The new message there is, grab your musket and join the fight. Paul Revere rushed across the waters, borrowed a horse in Charlestown, and he took off into the night, warning everyone he could with the famous words that I was taught in school, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" But that was wrong. You see, in 1775, we were all still British, so no one's getting out of bed, that's for sure. Instead, he more likely shouted, "The regulars are coming out," or "The redcoats are coming out," a much different message. Grab your musket, join the fight, and many did. The very next morning at dawn, April 19, 1775, the British troops arrived at Lexington Common and fired on the Minutemen there, an action we call today, the shot heard round the world, the first battle of the American Revolution. I told you that story as we're passing by the Boston base of the United States Coast Guard, right here at Constitution Wharf, where the USS Constitution was actually built. The Coast Guard is still the one branch of military service primarily tasked with saving lives. The white hulls typically used in search and rescue. Black hulls are workboats like tugs and buoy tenders. Gray and orange are harbor patrol. The motto of the Coast Guard, Semper Paratus, means always ready. Next we have Battery Wharf, right here to our right, the site of a battery of cannon that guarded the north end and the Charles River beyond. This was also the departure point for the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first free African-American regiment to fight during the American Civil War of the 1860s. That story very well told in the movie Glory with Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman. Next, Burroughs Wharf, tied up alongside, is the John S. Damrell fireboat, the headquarters of the Harbor Division for the Boston Fire Department. That fireboat, like every others on the water, was ready to go at a moment's notice, just like a fire engine on land. Ready to go. If there's a fire to fight from the waterfront, she'll be there. And look at these wharves. You can see a walking trail come up one side of the wharf, across the end, down the other, and it meets up with the next one, and the next, and the next. And this is a good example of the Boston Harbor Walk, which goes all the way around the harbor. It actually begins at the JFK Memorial Library, partway down Dorchester Bay. You walked along the waterfront there, up to Castle Island, and kept going through South Boston and all of Boston, Charlestown, Chelsea, and East Boston to the airport. You walked that trail some 46 miles all around Boston Harbor, except no access at the Coast Guard base or to our right at Union Wharf, the lovely brick townhomes on it. And there's the steeple of the Old North Church in the background. Union Wharf has been privately owned since 1800. The only way to get to the water's edge at Union Wharf is if you own one of those townhomes, or better yet, you know someone else who does. Zillow suggests one of those townhomes would go on the market today for something like $3.5 million. I think that works out to perhaps $500,000 for the townhome, and then only $3 million for 2 deeded parking places that just come with it. All the Seaport District, those modern buildings directly ahead of us. About 50 years ago, those were built on what was then asphalt parking lots. Now you know why Bostonians value a parking space, just like everybody else. To our right, we've got a great view of the waterfront and all of the financial district, downtown Boston. Close to us are three long buildings which once were warehouses. The brick building is Sergeant's Wharf. The granite building with the iron balconies is Lewis Wharf, followed by the brick and granite building Commercial Wharf. Today mostly residences with great views of the harbor and the city beyond. Now look past Commercial Wharf over the marina. In the background, in the shadows, right above the treetops of Columbus Park, there is the cream cupola and the gold dome of Faneuil Hall, where our forefathers met in secret to plan the revolution. There's an even better view straight down the waterway. Our Cradle of Liberty, sometimes called. And just in front of that, in the shadows, the broad green copper dome is Quincy Market, the oldest open-air market in the nation, from the 1840s. Today a food court with shops on either side. The tall building with the clocks near the top is our first skyscraper, the Boston Custom House. The base building, built in 1849 on the original, what was then the shoreline, that is. The tower added in 1914, tallest in Boston for 50 years. Now, cameras out. Here's a very close shot. We're going to have seconds to look at it. Find the flagpole at Long Wharf. Watch as it lines up with a black skyscraper. Right above the traffic lights is another brick building with a cream cupola and a gold dome. There it is in the shadows, all the way back there. That is the old Boston State House, the old Boston State House. Now, fear not, if you missed that, there's another chance. When we disembark, just walk down to the flagpole, less than a minute to do that, turn around and look, and you'll see the old Boston State House right from there. That State House was built right there on the original shore of the Shawmut Peninsula, and also at the very beginning of Long Wharf, which was completed just 3 years earlier. From the old State House to the flagpole is the original length of Long Wharf, as it was built in 1710. 1,586 feet out into Boston Harbor. Long Wharf, remember. Today, you see what's happened. We've been growing so much as a commercial port, we've just been filling in the land on either side of the wharf for current shoreline. Folks, thanks. You can leave the chairs where they are. Don't even worry. No, that's appreciate the thought. Well, there was a terrible thing, though, that took place at the old State House. Remember those Parliament taxes, 1768? Well, by March of 1770, we still weren't very happy about that. During that month, a group of citizens gathered outside the old State House, started to bother one of the sextons, the sentries, that is, on duty. He a lovely open space. Now, unite 1812. Oh, take a moment to watch the monument through the rigging, capture a picture of this if you'd like. I'll tell you why in a moment. During the War of 1812 off Nova Scotia, she encountered the HMS Guerriere, and in the brief battle that followed, crew members saw British cannonballs bouncing off her hull. Huzzah, one shouted. Her sides are made of iron. That's where the nickname Old Ironsides came from. But she's not iron, but wood. 22-inch thick Georgia live oak. After she sunk the Guerriere in 35 minutes, they counted 19 British cannonballs embedded in her hull. And to remain a commissioned warship in the United States Navy, yes, she's still actively served by active duty officers and crew members. She sails a couple of times during the summer months. With the help of a tug, she goes out to Castle Island, fires a 21-gun salute to Fort Independence, and then returns to her berth facing the other direction, so her hull will weather evenly the following year. You noted the monument to the rigging of the Constitution? Well, that was the design inspiration for Phase 3 of our big dig. This wonderful bridge to our right is now heading more towards behind us as we continue our turn. This is the Leonard P. Zakin Bunker Hill Bridge, completed in 2003, the widest cable-stayed bridge in the world. There were at least 3 of these ships anchored some 20 miles off the island of Nantucket. Their job was to warn other mariners of a very dangerous anywhere in the world outside of Ireland itself. If you were sailing all the way to New York City, however, before you ever got to see the Statue of Liberty, you might have, especially during the terrible Irish potato famine years, we had thousands of Irish, 10,000 alone came in 1848. Sadly, the city was overwhelmed. Shopkeepers, when confronted, many people had signs in their windows saying N-I-N-A. Bow Squash, back in the 1970s. And a little closer to us, just over the gazebo at the end of the causeway, The black and white building on Columbia Point is the John F. Kennedy Memorial Library, honoring our 35th American president. I'll mention the JFK Library later on in our tour. As we now make our turn here, you've got a great view of the outer Boston Harbor, and you can see some of the 34 islands that make up the Boston Harbor Islands National Park. The one immediately to our right and closest to us looks like two great big hills. I'm going to come back and talk about that. Without representation. And they relieved those ships of their cargo of tea. Where did they put all the tea? In the harbor, that's right. Right over the side in the Boston Harbor, that's what they did. The king heard about it. He was not amused. He called it the Boston Tea Act. Well, today we know it instead as the Boston Tea Party. There we go. My God. Here, I got a couple more gold stars. Here you go. Your history teacher will be very proud of you, young lady. That's where the Boston Tea Party took place. Even more important, that's why it took place. Now, to the right is the city of Boston, founded in 1630 by Puritans looking for religious and political freedom. But to the left of that bridge is south of Boston. That's why we call this all South Boston. You'll catch on to our incredibly complex naming strategy, I just know it. Long Wharf, South Boston, yeah, you'll get it. All these modern buildings belong to the Seaport District, the fastest growing in the city's history. To the right, in front of the Goodwin Tower, look at the waterfront. There's a small 4-story glass cube-shaped building right there on the water's edge. That's the Institute of Contemporary Art. And when that museum was finished in 2006, that was one of the tallest buildings here in the Seaport District. All these others sprouted up about a decade ago, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But cameras out. Here's a unique selfie. Watch this glass wall of the condo complex. It'll be a mirror. Get your cameras ready. And if you don't have a camera, you can wave. There we are. Nice view. There we go. Pier 4. Pier 4. Years ago, if you said Pier 4, everyone knew there was one thing there. It was a restaurant owned by a man named Anthony. He called it Anthony's Pier 4 Restaurant. He was brilliant. In the 1960s, when he first opened, he invited all the taxi drivers in Boston, come to my restaurant for a free lunch. And where do you think they would suggest a hungry passenger go? Let me take you to Anthony's Pier 4 Restaurant. Good food. I'll take you right there. By the time I met Anthony, when I went there for dinner as a young man, Anthony was still greeting people as they came in for dinner. He was in his late 80s by then. By that time, he'd grown his restaurant so much that it was now the largest grossing restaurant in the United States. He passed away. Pier 4 went to private ownership. It's now condos and a couple businesses. I hope the family will open another restaurant soon. We've just passed by Commonwealth Pier, built in 1912 for the passenger trade, including the transatlantic ocean liners like the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth. Well, right now, we have the Boston Fish Pier. It's in Boston. There's fish on the pier. It's a pier. There you go. Now, our fishing fleet here in Boston, they look a lot alike, these vessels, even though they're different sizes. Most of them have a large reel on the stern, the back of the boat. Some of them have two. Wrapped around that reel is a big fishing net. And the way their crews catch fish, they go out to the fishing grounds, they unroll that net off the reel, over the stern, into the water, and they drag it behind them, which is why those are all called stern draggers. I can't make this up. Stern draggers. And our fleet typically sails all the way to George's Bank, about 150 miles offshore. And that's one of the most fertile and productive fishing grounds anywhere in the world. They'll bring their catch right back here to the Boston Fish Pier, where everything is weighed and processed and then distributed locally, nationally, even globally. Boston's long been known as a wonderful place for fresh seafood. It's certainly possible this morning's catch could end up on some of your dinner plates later tonight. So once again, welcome to Boston. In the background, that flexible rooftop belongs to the Leader Bank Pavilion, which is an outdoor concert hall. Already planning artists to come entertain audiences here in Boston in the months and years ahead. Well, remember Long Wharf? We attracted the world's attention. Shippers wanted to come right here and do business. Boston was a trading city. And over the years, we've grown so much. we ran out of the land that was first here, when we first arrived. We just had to keep building. You know, we needed a little more space and a little more. We built out into the harbor. And we've done so much building out into the harbor that today 75% of our city actually sits on man-made land. Like this long straight rock wall that you see right here. That's man-made. Now look over that wall and over that truck with a red cab. In the background, in your background, is a windowless building with some angled chimneys just a little behind us there. Looking out this way. Now folks, we do have a few more chairs up on the very top deck. If you'd like, you're certainly welcome to come join us. We've got a good family gathering up here. Now I want to ask you to look to the right. Directly off our starboard side is the very end of Long Wharf. And you see the flagpole there? Just make a note of that. I'm going to point that out towards the end of our journey. But now, for those that I can see on the outer decks, tell me, why do we call it Long Wharf? Because it's long. Thank you very much. Who said that? 2 gold stars. Both. Absolutely wonderful. It's long. Long Wharf was the longest wharf, not only here in Boston, but on the entire Atlantic seacoast. When it was built over 300 years ago, back in 1710, Long Wharf stood about 1/3 of a mile into Boston Harbor. We could get 50 cargo ships tied up alongside that wharf, loading and unloading as if every single one was on land. And that's why Boston became the desired port for shippers from around the world. Everybody wanted to trade in Boston because it was so easy. Even British Parliament took notice. It was 1764. So 1768, British Parliament voted taxes on all the goods here coming to Boston. They needed to recover treasury expenses for the French and Indian Wars. So they started taxing the goods coming here to Boston, which was a shame. None of us here had any representatives in British Parliament to talk to or make suggestions. We were just forced to pay taxes, and you can imagine how well that went over. I'll take a quick look. Yes, we still, absolutely. You still feel the same way, I get it. And welcome aboard the Frederick L. Nolan. Welcome to Boston. My name is Mike, and I'll be your narrator for our 60-minute historic harbor cruise. A quick question now that I'm on the outer decks up top and on the stern. Tell me, who's here in Boston? First time ever?
Yes.
Oh, lots of you. Great. Well, welcome. Some of you have been here before, so I'll stick with true stories then. We'll just do that. Do we have any veterans or active duty aboard today? How about visitors from outside the U.S.? Lots of folks. Shout out. Where are you from, folks?
Iceland.
Montreal! We had the bus from Montreal. There are more folks inside. They're from there as well. Yeah, where else? France! Bienvenue! Yes, ma'am. The Philippines. My goodness, now we're going far afield. Colombia. One more. Turkey, Toronto, oh my goodness. Aruba, oh.
Okay.
The Divvy, nice hotel. Good,
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Frederick L. Nolan on our international cruise to the historic harbor. My name is Mike, I'll be your narrator. But right now, if I could have your attention, please, the most important thing is to talk about safety. Safety first. This vessel, the Frederick L. Nolan, is a U.S. Coast Guard certified vessel, which means we have life jackets aboard for every one of you. On the outer decks, they're in the large bins. Down below, they're under benches. And in the unlikely event of an emergency, please follow the instructions of the captain and the crew. There is no smoking on board. That includes the use of e-cigarettes. When you use the stairs, please make sure you have at least one hand on the handrail. Remember, we're moving. One hand on the handrail. Likewise, we ask you please don't run on board. If you look around, you realize you're on a boat. It's not that big. So why run to get anywhere? Besides, when you trip and fall, there's nothing soft to land on. So save yourself the trouble. Please don't run. Down below on the first deck, that's where you'll find our snack bar and bar. Devin will take good care of you for anything you might like. Go to the bar, turn around to the far end of the vessel, and that's where you'll find our bathrooms. I say it that way all the time because so far I've yet to